World leaders of the 20 most advanced economies gathered in India over the weekend for the G20 Summit. Of course, that meant that at some point, a confrontation between, well, let's just call them not the best of friends, Justin Trudeau and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was bound to occur. Now, if you've been living under a rock, you might think that India and Canada share strong diplomatic relations. India is a democracy, the largest in the world. India is Canada's 10th largest trading partner. And of course, Canada is home to one of the largest Indian diaspora communities in the world. Almost 4% of Canada's population is of Indian origin. The reality, however, is that under Justin Trudeau's leadership, relations with India have hit rock bottom. And the breakdown in relations between Modi and Trudeau was on full display at the G20 Summit this weekend. Trudeau was snubbed again by Modi at this summit. He was scolded for his failure to contain a rising and more aggressive Khalistani secessionist movement. And of course, he got absolutely destroyed by Indian media pundits for his brazen display of hypocrisy. And to top it all off for our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau is currently stuck in India as the rest of the world has gone back to work because the jet he uses to travel the world and lecture everyone else on climate change is unable to take off. The symbolism is just too good. Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this. Why does it seem as though Canada, under the leadership of Justin Trudeau, is willing to sacrifice diplomatic and trade relations with India? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. In order to understand Justin Trudeau's latest train wreck visit to India, it's important to provide some context as to what happened on Justin Trudeau's first train wreck visit to India. And it's not just me calling it a train wreck visit. Even MSNBC journalists described it as, quote, a slow-motion train wreck. I wonder what could have made it such a disastrous visit. Could it have been the fact that Narendra Modi refused to meet Trudeau on the tarmac when he arrived in India? Could it have also been the fact that Justin Trudeau felt it was appropriate to dress himself and his family up in traditional Indian outfits, looking more Indian than the Indian Prime Minister and the rest of the Indian government? Or maybe it was the fact that one of the MPs that accompanied Justin Trudeau back in 2018 on that disastrous trip to India as part of a very large Canadian delegation, in their infinite wisdom, decided to invite a man named Jaspal Atwal to a India state dinner reception. See, the only problem with inviting Jaspal Atwal is that Mr. Atwal is a convicted attempted murderer of an Indian cabinet minister back in the 1980s. And as you can imagine, that didn't go over too well with the Indian government. So the cold shoulder that Justin Trudeau received in India from Narendra Modi this past weekend shouldn't have come as much of a surprise to anyone. In fact, 2 weeks ago, during the lead up to the G20 Summit, Canada decided to pause negotiations with India over a free trade deal. If there was any hope that the hostilities between Modi and Trudeau might turn around once Justin Trudeau stepped foot in New Delhi, well, those hopes were quickly quashed after Modi released a promotional video of him greeting the world leaders and, well, he forgot to mention or show Justin Trudeau. Furthermore, on Narendra Modi's agenda at the G20 Summit, nowhere was there any mention of a bilateral meeting between Canada and India. In fact, Narendra Modi made time for a bilateral formal meeting with the leader of Mauritius, that very important island off the coast of Madagascar, but Canada didn't get a bilateral meeting. Now, the informal sidelines meeting that Modi had with Justin Trudeau went about as well as you could have expected it to. And according to this Reuters article of that sidelines informal meeting between Modi and Trudeau, well, Trudeau got scolded by Modi for refusing to deal with a growing and more aggressive Khalistani movement in our country. And when asked by journalists at the end of the G20 Summit about the Khalistan issue raised by Modi in their meeting, Justin Trudeau took the chance to remind everyone that he supports the right to peaceful protest and freedom of expression, of course.
It will always defend freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. That's something that's extremely important to us.
Now, a pundit in India is going viral on social media right now because after this press conference, which made waves in Indian media, this pundit goes on an epic 9-minute rant, just destroying Justin Trudeau point after point with example after example. Just take a listen to some of the best parts. We've clipped some of the highlights for you here.
Justin Trudeau has just shown you the finger when it comes to Khalistan. This man has just come after imposing an emergency in his country to crack down on the freedom of expression and the right to peaceful protest. Now, the truth is, Mr. Trudeau, like any good Punjabi, I have family in Canada, and I promise you, the nonsense that you're talking is emanating from sheer hubris. You imposed an emergency in your country. Your father imposed an emergency in your country. Your democratic credentials are under deep question. And if Khalistan is a problem, and if a Khalistan is to be created, it is more likely it is going to be created within the territorial boundaries of Canada. This man, last time he came for a bilateral to India, showed up with a Khalistani in his entourage. What is going on? I mean, after a point, it's totally insane. You can't say it's domestic politics. You can't say he doesn't get it. You were beating up truckers in Canada. You were freezing their bank accounts. I mean, what is this guy talking? Which world is he living in? I have a big question on why the map of Canada should not be described as Canadian-occupied Quebec, which has been trying to secede from Canada for the longest period of time.
Rishabh is a perfect example of pseudo-liberal wokeism and how it is destroying a certain section of the West. He doesn't understand the difference between a peaceful protest and a civil unrest or an uncivil unrest with the placard of a terrorist.
And stop inviting Indians to come and live in Canada, because eventually they will stop, because they don't want to live in Khalistan. Because there is no Khalistan in India.
So good. I'll never get tired of listening to foreign pundits criticize our Prime Minister. It really exposes how soft the Canadian legacy media handles Justin Trudeau compared to the rest of the world. I love it when he says, stop inviting Indians to live in Canada. They don't want to live in Khalistan. Or this is a perfect example of the pseudo-intellectual wokeism destroying parts of the West. It's just spot on. After the meeting between Trudeau and Modi, both sides released a statement, and depending on which statement you choose to read, a different picture is painted about what was discussed at the meeting. More than half of Narendra Modi's statement about the meeting with Justin Trudeau talks about the Khalistani movement in Canada and the Trudeau government's failure to contain the growing secessionist movement. As the statement from Modi reads, he conveyed our strong concerns about continuing anti-India activities of extremist elements in Canada. They are promoting secessionism and inciting violence against Indian diplomats, damaging diplomatic premises, and threatening the Indian community in Canada and their places of worship. The nexus of such forces with organized crime, drug syndicates, and human trafficking should be a concern for Canada as well. It is essential for the two countries to cooperate in dealing with such threats. And the Canadian statement about the meeting mentions that Justin Trudeau told Modi to stay out of Canadian affairs and to respect national sovereignty. It should be mentioned that Canada is not the only country to raise concerns to India about them meddling in other countries' affairs. And Justin Trudeau is well within his right, and frankly, he should tell Modi to stay out of Canadian affairs. But when it comes to India's concern about how Canada handles the Khalistani movement, well, they have a point. Because as Trudeau and Modi were having their sidelines meeting at the G20, Khalistanis in Surrey, British Columbia were holding one of their sham referendums to form a breakaway ethno-state in the Indian province of Punjab known as Khalistan. Now, this is just one referendum of many that Khalistanis in Canada have been holding here to form a breakaway state in India. Now, why exactly they keep holding these referendums in our country is not exactly clear, but Canada is not the only country to deal with these Khalistan referendums. They've been happening in the UK and Australia as well. And these Khalistani supporters in Canada have been raising the ire of Indian government officials and Indian media for many years now. And why wouldn't Indian government officials and Indian journalists be upset about what's going on in our country? For months, posters calling to kill India with the names and faces of Indian diplomats have been around the country. And Khalistanis protested the memorial of the Air India bombing, the worst terrorist attack in Canada, by showing up at the memorial with pictures of the man responsible for the terrorist attack. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, at a Brampton Khalistan rally, a float depicted the graphic assassination of former Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi at the hands of Khalistani supporters. Justin Trudeau, however, in what can only be described as a move to put his own political future first and not the interest of the country, has refused to condemn these Khalistani displays in our country. This, of course, only further angered the Indian government, a country which, frankly, Canada at this moment is not in a position to throw away relations with. India is one of the largest countries in the world and one of the fastest growing economies as well. With Canada-China relations breaking down to the state they're in right now, if Canada wants to break away from reliance on China, a relationship with India is critical. Why is Justin Trudeau so willing to lash out at India, to attack India, and refuse to try and mend broken relations, while he appears to always use kid gloves when it comes to China? That is a question that the opposition in this country should really start to ask themselves. And a reminder to you to let me know in the comments your answer to the comment question. Why does it appear as though Canada, under Justin Trudeau's leadership, is willing to throw away relations with India? All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.